Kumbaya, kumbaya. Kumbaya. Just a little quick aside. We've been reading from Psalm 119. Psalm 119 is a psalm that is about the law. It's about the decrees. Almost every verse in Psalm 119 has some reference either to the statutes or the commandments or the word or all of those things. So when you read Psalm 119, you are actually reading a person's commitment to the law. And interestingly enough, to me it's interesting, it's organized according to the Hebrew alphabet. So there are little like stanzas, and each of these stanzas are organized according to Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, and all that. As opposed to Dr. Who has Daleks, which is a little different. Nobody here watches Doctor Who, do we? Do we? We have? Okay. Okay, 3. Okay. So that's a reference that went that far. Oh well. Lex taliones. Use taliones. What does that mean? Right there at the beginning. You have heard it said. You have heard that it was said. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Anybody hear that before? Yeah. Okay, that reference goes a little farther then. And what does that mean? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. What does it mean?
Let the punishment fit.
Payback. And payback is great. What's the difference between, well, what is the significance of lex talionis? Stephanie mentioned it. What is the difference between what had gone before? You see, this rule is found in 3 different places. It's found in Exodus, it's found in Leviticus, there's a slightly different version and implication in Deuteronomy. But the words are eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. And why do you suppose that they are in the Hebrew law when the Hebrews attest that they worship a just God? How is this justice? Well, because, you do it, you get it. You kill me, I kill you. You steal from me, I steal from you. It's all even then. The world is just. Everything is set up. Isn't that right? Absolutely. It's right. So this is considered just, and Jesus is saying, oh no, let's look at this in a different way. Let's look at it in a different way. Yes?
2 wrongs don't make a right.
2 wrongs don't make a right. And something about if we do this eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, we're all going to go around blind and toothless. But actually there was a sense of justice here that did not exist before these words came into being, before these words were established in law. And what the Jewish people or the Hebrews were trying to do, the lawmakers, the lawgivers were trying to do, was to say, let the punishment fit the crime. Because the tradition of revenge was a big deal. I mean, you've heard the stories of what the Romans did to Carthage, for instance. Anybody remember what the Romans did to Carthage? Knocked down all the buildings and sowed the fields with salt. What did the Romans do to the temple in Jerusalem? Knocked it down. Left only the Wailing Wall for people to put their little folded prayers into the cracks between the stones. Oh, there's another little example of where the punishment does not fit the crime. Crucifixion. You have heard it said. You have heard it said that this is the way it should be. But I tell you, but I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. Oh, and this is one that everybody likes. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other one also. Yes. I get up in the morning and I want to do that. My beloved, precious wife has to sit with me in a car and observe how I turn the other cheek. If the highways would go to Japan, I would probably follow someone to Japan so that I could cut them off. As an example of an eye for an eye, a left turn for a left turn. You have heard it said. And this is the one where everybody goes, oh yes, I need to do this. I need to do this because what is the difference between lex talionis or the law, the jus talionis? What is the difference between the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and what Jesus is espousing here? Anybody want to have a go at that?
There's a little bit of love.
Beg your pardon?
A little bit of love.
A little bit of love is involved. You have heard it said, but I say. There's another example of that later on. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I like it in the old ways better. I don't want to do that. Out there in that world, there are a whole set of behavioral laws, we want to call them. A whole set of things that when you go out there, your behavior is expected to be in a certain way. A great example of that, it's been a while now, but before the gas became extraordinarily expensive, sometime between my going to bed last night and getting up this morning, I was going into the Meyer in Holland, north side of Holland, and it just happened that all of the pumps were, occupied, except one. So I was going around to the right to come in because my gas tank is... And as I was going around to the right, this other guy blasted around and whoa, right in front of me. An eye for an eye. A tooth for a tooth. And I rolled the window down. And I said, thank you so very much. Dripping with sarcasm. And the man said, well, you'd have done it to me. I think at that time I might have wanted to do it to him.
Do we need another priest here this morning?
My confession will be in private.
Maybe he had to go to the hospital because of his wife.
Maybe he had to go. Maybe he had his wife or some woman was in the car with him. There is a whole behavioral pattern that goes on outside. We hear it from politicians of both sides of the spectrum, or all across the spectrum. This is the behavior that is expected of us. This is the behavior that is expected of us. This is what we should do. This is how things ought to be done. Give to the poor, take from the poor. Give to the rich, take from the rich. You got a lot of people out there yelling at you. You have heard it said, quite voluminously. And Jesus is saying that there's a whole different way of looking at this. You see, when you turn the other cheek, when you turn the other cheek, first of all, you have done something which people didn't realize, or if they realized it, they didn't believe they had access to. And that is, in those days, everybody did not have the right to make decisions for themselves. When you turn the other cheek, you are making a decision for yourself. That means you are giving to yourself power. And you are honoring yourself in a way which I think Jesus intended for you to do. Certainly I believe that God intends for you to do. So that's number one. But here's another thing. Sometimes in that car, when my beloved wife is riding along with me, sometimes I know you find this hard to believe, but sometimes I get really ratty, and I get really fussy, and I get really grumpy about stuff. And Stephanie doesn't respond.
I don't either.
Stephanie doesn't respond. She just lets me rant. And that takes an extraordinary amount of the fun out of it. It undermines my entire day when she does not rise to the bait.
You're lucky.
This does not happen all the time. Her confession will be in private also. But that's the nature of life. And this is what Jesus would have us do. Jesus would say, make the decisions for yourself how you live out this life, and do not give power to people who would override you and who would make you, or who would insist that you behave in a certain way. You behave in the way which honors your relationship with God. That's how you do it. That's what it's about. That's the permission that you have, that you did not have before Jesus came into the world. That's significant. It makes all the difference in the world to be able to do that. You get to choose how you live out your life. And your choices need to be in ways which honor your relationship with God and God's creation. However you see that. However in your life you engage in it.
Well said, Jagger.
The sun rises on beautiful boys. And the sun rises on bad little boys. Bad grown-up boys. The snow falls on the good and on the evil. All of these things are about a real world. And when we hear the song of a child, we realize that there is hope in this world, and there is a behavioral thing in this world, and we all get to choose. And he's telling me that's enough. I will say. So choose. So choose. Amen.